Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. My name is Stuart. I'm the Catchment Liaison Officer Team Leader for Scottish Water. Quite a mouthful. Thank you very much for inviting me to this. I very much appreciate it. It was supposed to be my line manager, Zoe Frogbrook, who was going to do this talk. But she decided to take the day off today because she knew it was going to be very sunny. So thank you, Zoe, when she sees this on video. For the next 15 minutes or so, I'm going to talk about the kind of activities that we do within Scottish Water, within this team, the Sustainable Land Management team, to improve source water quality for drinking water in Scotland. I'm happy to take any questions throughout. If you've got a burning desire to shout out, that's fine. Hangovers permitting, obviously. But don't be afraid to shout out. However, you can keep the questions to the end. That would be great, and I'll answer. I'll do questions at the very end. Okay, so we shall move on to the next one. So I'm going to provide a little bit of context of what Scottish Water is about and what we do in the SLN team. So we supply a population of 4.98 million. It's not 5.3 because the rest are on private supplies. That is right. We produce 1.9 billion litres of fresh water a day for commercial and domestic use. We have 272 water treatment works. We own about 70,000 acres of land. Most of it's tenanted out to farmers. 108 reservoirs, 128 lochs, rivers and burn abstractions, including the Dee and the Don as well. And we have 68 borehole sites that we all have to look after. On top of that, we've got 30,000 miles of freshwater pipe network and about 30,000 miles of wastewater pipe network in Scotland too. That's a lot of pipe network to look after. These guys are quite busy. I'm glad I don't have to do it. So moving on to the next one. So who are we, the team? So meant to be Zoe, just on the camera there. And there's me up the top there. I'm the team leader for these guys down here, a wild bunch of catchment liaison officers spread throughout the whole of Scotland. My counterpart, Amanda, she is an advisor. She deals mainly with the kind of development side of things and policy side of things, and she has the analyst and our technical admin underneath her to look after the rest of the team. So that's us, that's the team. So moving on, next. What is sustainable land management? What is sustainable land management to us, Scottish Water? Our source water quality can be affected by rural land management activities. Big words to say that farming and forestry wreak havoc on quality water. So it's pesticides, herbicides, nutrients, sediment coming into the water supply, concentrations of heavy metals, that's quite a big issue. Microbiological organisms, hydrocarbons, we do have issues with oil and kerosene, heating domestic oil going into waterworks, and increases in colour level from peatland degradation and poaching. So that's what it is to us. Moving on. So what do we do as a team? Well, we do catchment assessments. So we walk out into the raw water catchments, and they're a mixture of desk and walkover assessments. Our catchments can range from tens of hectares, quite small, all the way up to several thousand hectares. And they'll contain a variety of land uses, farming, forestry, wind farms and hydro schemes and all sorts of other things. And even minor urban developments, such as in the National Park. We have to deal with that too. We have an incentive scheme that we administer. It runs akin to the SRDP programme that's currently in place. It's an EU-funded scheme, and it incentivises farmers not to meet regulation, but to go beyond regulation. And by regulation, I mean your general binding rules, which is the common denominator for everybody. Everybody has to work to those. We deal with a range of consultations, so that's going to be forestry, wind farms, hydro schemes, and other things that can have a detrimental effect on source water. And we're involved in a number of projects. I'm going to talk about that later on. I'm going to talk about all of this later on. But one specific project that I lead on, which will be of interest to yourself. So what's next? Catchment assessment. So what do? The surveys that we do are risk-based, and the risk that we deal with is related back to us by our process scientists. They take samples, they tell us what's in the water, they tell us what the issues are. We'll then assess if it's a high risk or a low risk. And as you can see from here, I'm missing a couple of wee bits here. Our two main problems that we deal with is cryptosporidium and organics. Not to say that we don't take the rest quite seriously, because they're all public health issues, but these are the two big hitters that we deal with at the moment. Sorry.
The number of times that risk is identified in a year or something?
Yeah, that's by volume in the year. Yeah, correct. Yeah. See, he shouted out, so feel free to shout out. Go ahead.
That's all right for me, I'm at the front.
You're at the front, yeah, good stuff. To give you an idea of, for pesticides, we deal with PCVs, which are prescribed concentrated values. These are benchmarks for us. And for pesticides, it's no more than a thimble full of pesticides in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. If it goes over that, we detect it, it's a public health risk at that point. It's a massive issue. And if you go on an industrial scale of a massive catchment like the Ugi or the Devron, where you've got lots of farmers spraying lots of stuff about, it's quite easy to go across that prescribed concentrated values. So that's the kind of things that we deal with. Okay? Right, moving on. There we go. So the survey, once we do the walkover survey, and we've assessed all the data that we've got, we will come up with a range of suggestions, interventions, which I'll show you an example of later, to improve the source water quality coming off the fields or coming off any other type of land use. And for these interventions to be put into place, we have to work with landowners and other agencies. It's impossible not to just remark on the words that you said earlier, you've got to work with other people. It's impossible not to. We will feed this information into our drinking water safety plans, which is a much larger plan within the organisation, and it takes it's more of a 6-month review on these plans, and we'll review it every 6 months, and we'll change what we need to change. And down here, I've got reactive and proactive. Basically, every survey we've done to date were reactive, based on the risk sent to us from process scientists, but we've moved to proactive. So every single CLO that I have underneath me has their own geographic location, and they can go and assess the catchments in their own time. Slightly erroneous from the first slide. This is what we've done to date. It's actually 242 water treatment works. We've done 72 water treatment catchment surveys to date. We've concentrated up here because this is where the main issues are for us for pesticides in the Ugi and the Devron, Aberdeenshire, and colours and nutrients in along here, which is about Duntrathan. We've done a few other wee bits in here, but that's what we've done so far. So just Aberdeenshire, the River Dee and the Don have been quite a challenge to assess. And these are some of the issues that we have to deal with when we go out and find. As you can see, you're not going to drink that unless it's whiskey. And judging by the faint whiskey, the smell of whiskey in here today, you have been doing that. Degradation, you guys have been out in the moorland, you'll have seen this, you'll have walked over it, you'll have not thought of anything of it, but what's happening is that is leaking colour straight into source water, and that is very difficult and very expensive to treat. So that's that, and we'll give you an idea of what's happening with crypto.
Jared, can you
Yes.
tell us what is the colour? What is the problem with the colour?
Right, organics, yeah.
Hydrocarbon.
No, the colour is just basically dissolved organic matter that comes out of the peat. And when it goes into the water treatment works, it has to be removed. And there's different types of treatment that we do. There's chlorination, there's filters, there's also coagulation plants, there's all sorts of different things, but it's very, very expensive to treat water to meet the EU directive framework of the water that comes out your tap. You go in, you turn the tap on, you don't think anything about it, but behind the scenes, it's a very expensive, very costly, lengthy treatment process. Is that okay? Yeah. Right, so for Cryptosporidium, much easier. Dead sheep, that's what sheep do, they die. I come from a livestock farm, I see this every second day, I hate sheep. True story. Poaching, river crossings, and fantastic drainage works, which in the past I've been accused of doing as well. Wherever there's livestock near water sources, livestock poop, they poop straight into the water supply, and that's where your Cryptosporidium enters the water supply. And crypto is very difficult to deal with because it's a very hardy microorganism. It can last all the way through past the water treatment works, and it'll cause you really to poop yourself. That's really what it does. You do need a doctor. Well, one of the things is if we liaise with the public health of the NHS, and if it's reported back to us that levels of diarrhoea start to increase in a certain area, the first thing we'll look at is Cryptosporidium, with a view that if we have to issue a boil notice, we'll issue a boil notice, which is very rarely happens. Your water is quite safe, but these are the things that we do consider. And to give you an idea of the things we used to do, not only is this crypto, but we've also got pesticides running into the water here as well. That would be good old-fashioned Cooper's sheep dip, if anybody's familiar with the agricultural world. And I've got anecdotal evidence. I used to be an agricultural officer for ARPID up in the Western Isles for 6 years. And there was evidence of this kind of thing happening right up into the 70s and 80s, where they would just dam off a burn, chuck in the Cooper sheep dip, and then chuck in the sheepdogs, the children themselves to get their yearly bath. I'm glad we don't do that anymore. So these are the kind of interventions that we'll come up with once we've done the walkover survey. Very simple things from changing feeding locations to fencing off entire areas, and then liaising with other land managers to ensure that we can do different types of stock management. It can be from very simple things like, as I said, fencing stuff off, to very complicated things like peatland restoration, which I'll talk about in a wee minute. So, and then what we do is we give it an owner and we give it a time frame, and then we'll review it on an ongoing basis to see how well they're doing. Sometimes cost is prohibitive, but we'll still come up with an intervention depending on the nature of the public health issue. We will assess whether we're going to spend the money or not. Okay, right, moving on. So then I'll just quickly go through the incentive scheme. This assists the finance of measures that will improve and protect drinking water quality, really aimed at landowners, farmers. It's not to meet regulated compliance, it's to go beyond it. And it's a range of capital and management items, from fencing off things to peatland restoration and everything in between. Do you want me to hold on while you take a picture of that? Yeah. I'll smile when I'm finished this, because you're all making me very nervous. All right, okay, so the process that we do here is identify the catchments for the implementation of sustainable land management. We've done that, we'll show you that. Identify practices, I'll have to check whether this is sensitive information. No, it's not. Identify practices impacting on water quality, poaching, pesticides, implement those measures, and then we regularly monitor it. So we'll go back out on a 6-monthly review, see how it's doing. We'll then go back to the process scientists to ask them how the levels are when they go and take a water sample. Oh, sorry.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, so these are our priority catchments. Our incentive scheme isn't Scotland-wide. We've targeted it in these areas here because these are where the highest issues have been. The two particular ones is the Ugain and Deveron for pesticides, because it's a very intensive agricultural area. And then Lantrathan, Ascog, Orkney and Winterhope are all for nutrients, basically from poaching to farmers lashing fertiliser about and it's landing in water supplies. Particularly tricky in Orkney because procuring fresh, safe water up there is quite difficult because there's a lot of peatland, but it's also still quite a busy agricultural area. So we do spend quite a lot of time up in Orkney, and that's probably where our highest success is so far, to give you an idea. Okay. Moving on. Okay, so here's a range of the measures that we'll pay for. And this information is available online, or we've got booklets if you want to. The first thing that we try and ask people to do is to do a water environment management plan. We pay 100% back on that. We will ask a consultant or a specialist to go out to walk over the farm, to identify all the issues, and then come up with a range of measures that will help. And the kind of measures that we have, simple stuff like stock fencing, and then there's the technical support for training, to more complicated stuff like loosening compacted soil layers. And I've highlighted peatland grip blocking and peatland restoration because that's of interest, and I'll talk about the project in a little minute. All right. Okay, and here is some of the stuff that we've done. There's one of my happy catchment liaison officer, Graham Ski, with a farmer up in Aberdeenshire, and that's a biobed that he's fitted in a spray washback area. There's some happy cows not pooing in water supplies, and there's another biobed, the type of stuff that we fund.
Is that a filter system biobed?
Yeah, and it's as the name suggests, it's bio, so it's just your gravels and all sorts of other things. Totally sustainable, and you can buy most of this stuff out of B&Q if you wanted to. You could do it yourself if you wanted to. I think some people have done it themselves, albeit we would have paid for it. So we'll just talk about some of the development activities that my colleague Amanda Hutchison deals with. So we will review any consultations that we get through for wind farms, hydro schemes, aerial spraying and forestry, because there's some big forestry schemes out there. We get those consultations through, we will review what's happening, we will assess what impact or risk it will have on source water, and then we will then give the developers back a range of interventions or a range of nice to have, so it minimises any harm to our source water supply. Forestry is probably our biggest one at the moment, because there's a massive drive on to plant up as much as possible. Is it 10,000 hectares per year for the Forestry Commission?
Across Scotland, yeah.
Yeah, across Scotland. And they just marginally miss it every year, but there's a big drive on to try and match that. And there's a lot of forestry activity taking place right now, because all the trees planted in the 70s are now ready for felling, so there's quite a lot going on. So, the projects. Let's see, so, yeah. Okay, so we're involved in a lot of projects across UK and Scotland. But one of the main projects that I'm involved with, that I lead on, is what's called the SR15 Peatland project. So what I've done is I've identified 21 high-risk water treatment works throughout the whole of Scotland that are identified for TOC and THM, so that's total organic carbon. And THMs, trihalomethanes, is a byproduct of the treatment process. So basically it's when chlorine meets organic matter and it's a public health issue. So obviously if you're treating stuff that's highly coloured, you're going to create a lot of THMs. So I will monitor these until 2018, do desk and walkover surveys. I'll then assess the peatland condition hand in hand with other organisations like SNH, SEPA and so forth. And then I'll put forward recommendations for restoration of peat, which is quite useful. So we also work with other organisations. This is a company called ResTech, and they'll do satellite imagery for us, so we can get a peatland score on some of our catchments, because they're so large we actually can't walk the whole thing. So they will go through many permutations until they basically come up with a score like this, and that allows us to know where we should be targeting our activity. There are other companies out there, but we've chosen ResTech in this situation. Okay? Right. So, once we have identified the catchments that we want to restore for peatland, we'll do things like grip blocking, damming, reprofiling. Did you talk about this yesterday at all when you were doing this? Or are you going to be talking about it today? Reseeding of sphagnum moss and deforestation, because some areas should never have been planted. And it relies on operators with expertise in peatlands. There's not many in Scotland, but it is starting to build. The landowners' corporations and other agencies like FCS, SNH and SEPA to help us with this. And here's the kind of examples of what we do. That's grip blocking. So these are plastic pylons driven into the ground, and that has the effect of raising the water table. Get used to this saying, wetter is better. So if you raise the water table, you're returning the peatland into its more natural state. Don't fall in there because you'll never come back out again. And this site is quite interesting. I was here a couple of weeks ago. This is Carnwath, south of Edinburgh. And this was a mature stand of lodgepole pine. It's a Forestry Commission site. I hope they don't mind me talking about this. It's a very good example. So last year they felled the entire site. And then they took a mulcher across it. As you can see, it's been mulched. And they blocked all the drains. The water table has risen. And this gentleman here has taken his peat probe. You probably recognise him. Is he here today? No? He's taken a peat probe and has taken a wee plug of peat to assess its condition. Unbelievably, and I was quite surprised myself, this was done last year. You can't really see it in this picture, but the sphagnum moss was already starting to grow back. Go back in another 2 or 3 years, the place will probably be covered in sphagnum moss. It's quite incredible how quickly you can turn it around, which is a very good thing. So, just to let you know how I got here, I'm not talking about my drive up. It was a wonderful drive up, but my own career path to get here, because you guys are still at university and college, you've got a long way to go yet. Back in the day when I had more hair and a full set of teeth, I was raised on an upland livestock farm in Perthshire, which I still run. As I said, I hate sheep, and they hate me, but that's fine. From there, I took out qualifications in agriculture and forestry management. The latter I did in Aberdeen University, which is a wonderful organisation. My sole purpose in Aberdeen, I think, was to try and drink the place dry. I failed, but I did get a degree in forestry management. I then went on to work for Scottish Natural Heritage to learn a little bit about conservation. I worked as an agricultural officer for ARPID up in Stornoway. I did a 2-year secondment with the Forestry Commission in Scotland quite recently, and now I've moved into Scottish Water. This has taken me about 20 years to go through this process, and I've realised it's not about sheep and just about sheep and cattle, or conservation or trees. It's about the whole thing, the whole package. So these are the things you need to consider. It's not just about shearing sheep and being sworn at by your dad to get off some sort of tractor. It's about the whole package and how the whole thing works. And the important thing is there's more than one road to where you want to get to. I took a very, very long route to get to where I want to, but I found the place where I want to be, and it has significance for me. So don't worry about when you first start off and you have to spend your life, your first 10 years of your life, shoveling cattle shit. That's what I did. It does lead on to other things. Okay, any questions?
How resilient is 1.9 billion litres?
That's a very good question. That's more of a technical question for the policy boards in Scottish Water. We do have resilience and contingency plans in place. The pipe network is incredible. So if something fails in one area, we can actually draw water from a different area to augment. So there is a automatic resilience built into the network. The source water is not so resilient. So what we do is that we're the first pillar of water governance. So we're the first line of defence of quality water. Then it's the water treatment works, the pipe network, and then we put the last pillar of defence onto the customers' houses.